Hello, hello, and welcome, dear listeners, to another enthralling installment of podcast Love People Technology Learning. And I'm your spirited host, Tamara Kacharova, CEO Lanes AI, and I'm thrilled to have you join us once more for an exhilarating plunge into insightful conversation. Each episode is a voyage to discovery, leading us to uncover hidden treasures of wisdom and captivating narratives.
And that started from way back when the movie Trading Places came out. It's an Eddie Murphy movie from probably the 90s, but it could be the 80s. And Eddie Murphy was the star of that movie, and he was a stockbroker. And when I was young, I wanted to be Eddie Murphy. And when I say I wanted to be Eddie Murphy, I didn't just want to be a guy who was like Eddie Murphy. I literally wanted to be that person.
Oh my God.
So when he did a movie and he was a stockbroker, I wanted to be a stockbroker. And I went to college thinking that that would be the path that I would take. So if we practice our comedy, which only lasts for about 5 minutes, the same way we practice our training delivery, you're going to be good at it. And so for people like you who say, I always wanted to get up there and do it, I encourage you to do it because you're funnier than you think.
I'll try to do it in my next conference when I will be speaking. I promise you, Artrell Williams will be some special story with my sense of humor, I hope so, and I will tell them it's Artrell Williams told me that I need to practice. Sorry. And today, my excitement knows no bounds as I introduce our esteemed guest to all of you, Artrell Williams. We first crossed paths with my guest at a conference in New Orleans back in February 2023. He is not just anyone. His words have a knack for stirring inspiration wherever he goes. Artrell has consistently struck me as a person of unwavering reliability, empathy, and support. What's more, his infectious sense of humor never fails to light up the room, from his love for music and comedy to his genius connections with friends, colleagues, and family. Artrell embodies a zest for life that draws people towards him like a magnet. Artrell serves as the Learning and Development Manager at Sumitomo Rubber USA, where his leadership has garnered acclaim for innovative approach to training, including an award-winning playing card activity that ingeniously educates on rubber manufacturing processes. His commitment to excellence in gamification is further exemplified by his pursuit of the Master Craftsman gamification certification with Centente Inc. Artrell's expertise is underscored by multiple training certifications from prestigious organizations such as DDI, Myers-Briggs, and Training Industry Inc. But Artrell's talents extend beyond the professional realm. He is also a connoisseur of stand-up comedy, seamlessly blending humor with learning, design, and delivery. He advocates for integration stand-up comedy techniques into L&D, and I know it's really true, to enhance engagement and learning outcomes. Today, we stand on the cusp of an exciting adventure poised to explore a myriad of topics that promise to make this episode a truly enriching and exhilarating experience for all of you. Welcome, Artrell, to my podcast, and so dear people, buckle up for a journey of insights and innovation at every turn. Welcome to our show. Artrell, hi! How are you doing?
I'm doing well. I'm glad we're on the backside of the hump day, as they call it. So I'm ready to coast into this weekend because I need a break.
Yes, I remember. How was your German trip? Tell about your experience in German conference. I know that it was like last week before.
Yeah, I just had the opportunity to post anything about it because there's been so much going on. And it was such an enriching experience that I wanted to make sure that I sat down and gave it the proper amount attention that I could in the post, because there were several people that I had met that I wanted to acknowledge, and just to take a moment and reflect upon that entire experience, not just the experience of the conference that I went there to attend, but the experience of the culture that I had never experienced before. It was a travel experience unlike most of the others that I've taken, because in this instance, there was nobody waiting for me to get there, and there was no one who sent me there. So it wasn't like if I didn't show up in Germany that anyone would call and say, hey, is Artrell still coming? I sent a couple emails ahead of time, and I said, hey, if you don't hear from me by a certain time, please call the cops.
Yeah.
Notify whatever international authority you need to, but I plan to be there. And if people didn't find me there, then be on the lookout. But ultimately, the trip went really well. I met really great people, saw great sights. One of the things that I acknowledge each time I go to Europe, it's almost like the US's replica of things that we see over there, because our country is not quite as old. But then you get to Europe in general and you see these buildings that have been around since the 200s or something like that. It's just fascinating to me. And you've got the rich culture there. It's an older culture, older buildings. There's things that have been there since way before the United States has been. And I just love taking all of that in. And I had schnitzel.
Yes, I love it. For me, it's the same way. When you travel in a conference and you are attending the conferences, like the biggest experience which I have, it's a people, culture, people from different countries. And like, of course, if it's in Europe or in the United States, it doesn't matter. For me, it's a new experience to see the great views, new buildings, arts, like museums, like everything. And I know, like, oh my God, we're on the same page. I know that's like, and German is really a great country to visit. I've been in Berlin just one time, but I remember you wasn't in Berlin. But like, yes, I know it's a great place to visit. And at the start of our conversation, I'd love for you to share with all of us about like your career in training and development. How did you get to where you are today?
It's a long route that wasn't intentionally one of education or training or anything like that. My bachelor's degree is in marketing. And that started from way back when the movie Trading Places came out. It's an Eddie Murphy movie from probably the 90s, but it could be the 80s. And Eddie Murphy was the star of that movie, and he was a stockbroker. And when I was young, I wanted to be Eddie Murphy. And when I say I wanted to be Eddie Murphy, I didn't just want to be a guy who was like Eddie Murphy. I literally wanted to be that person.
Yes. Oh, my God.
So when he did a movie and he was a stockbroker, I wanted to be a stockbroker. And I went to college thinking that that would be the path that I would take. And I visited an agency in Columbia, South Carolina, which is right outside of where I went to college. And it seemed like the type of environment that I wouldn't enjoy. You know, I'm not a shirt and tie everyday type of person. That wasn't the only thing that deterred me from going the stockbroker route. But I realized at that time also that what I was learning as a business administration major with a concentration in marketing, I wasn't prepared for that type of marketing. So I ended up going into sales and then spent some time in sales with a bottling company. I was going to name the company, but it's not necessarily relevant, but they distributed sodas in the area that I was in. And I worked for them for about 3 years, partly while I was in school and then after I got out. And that's where I really got my feet wet with sales and marketing. And then moved around a bit, sticking to sales for most of it. And then I ended up in telecommunications around 2000 and worked for a company out of Charlotte, North Carolina in telecom, and grew with that company and spent 15 years in telecom. During that 15-year period, the company started to evolve and grow. And the group that I was in got expanded to a more regional role, and I had the opportunity to either move to a different city, which was quite far away from where I was at the time. So I could either relocate to Greensboro, North Carolina is where it was, or take a different job in my area. And I started to explore opportunities in training and development because I still had a knack for that. I got into training and I was pretty good at it.
I know it.
But the thing I realized during that part of the journey is that there are a lot of transferable skills from sales to training. So I realized that I was using a lot of what I was doing in sales while I was in the classroom. I just was selling concepts instead of products. And that experience in sales really helped me to be the type of trainer and facilitator that I've become, because it helped me become comfortable speaking with people and being clear about what I want to convey. But at the same time, it didn't give me the same type of pressure being in sales where you have to meet quotas. And as a sales leader, I saw some things being accepted by my leadership that I didn't quite agree with. You know, you find some people who learn how to skate the system. They do certain things that aren't necessarily ethical, but when people's jobs are on the line, sometimes leadership might turn a blind eye. And I saw that in some of my employees doing things that I didn't quite agree with, but that got them the numbers on paper that looked great to management. And I just didn't love being in that type of environment. So from sales to training, I went, and that's where I am now. So I've transferred from, at that time I was in Charlotte, I went to Columbia, South Carolina, and then transferred to Buffalo, New York, which is where I am to this day. But I got out of telecom and moved into manufacturing about 6 years ago. And I love the experience of being able to see how things are made and how the manufacturing sector plays an impact on our overall economy. I like being a part of that. And I see lots of opportunity to be able to bring the innovation that we used in telecommunications over to manufacturing. The sky's the limit.
Yeah, it's a great story. And it's so natural when you are from marketing on sales, and after that you your next level to be in learning and development. And it's a great story. It's a great example when you start to work with the people and share your knowledge and lead the team about learning and development from the business side to support the business, because learning and development departments support the business. It's not just real business. And my question will be to continue this line. What do you think? What kind of skills from marketing and sales help you now to work in learning and development? And it's really, you feel it, that it's really great skill set, competencies which support you and your team now in your training and development work.
One thing that's hard to teach is passion. But it helps. It helps a lot to be passionate about what one does. And I was passionate about the products and services that I had to offer. I almost called it brainwashing at the time because I really believed in what I was selling. I believed that the telecommunications products that we offered were going to help make people's lives better. And once I moved into manufacturing, I started to believe the same thing. And it's not that I had to make myself believe it, but I suppose I took the roles because I believed in the products that I was supporting, and I believe in the manufacturing that we do here. So it's not really hard for me to transition that the way that I communicate and the things that I communicate, because in sales, you have to make sure that you sell people on the benefits. It's not as important what the features of a product are as much as it is what those products and services may do for the individual. So when I bring someone into a classroom for training, I need them to understand how the information that they're going to get is going to help them do whatever it is that they're going to try to do, whether it be in their jobs or in their personal lives. But if I truly believe that what I'm saying to them is correct and can help them, I think that passion comes across, and that's one of the skills that I've been able to bring to training that I learned during sales.
Yeah, yes, it's true. And I think like for me, because I'm from sales too, like my first career like experience was in sales. It was many, many years ago, but like after that I came to learning and development. But like I think another skill which helped me to work in learning and development, it's like pitching for business, because I needed to do some kind of pitch about projects, about money, about new budget for the next year, and I need to sell, always I sell something to the businesses. And second one, it's about data, because sales and marketing, we operate just numbers. And it's a good skill when you are in learning and development, because it's it's so hard to have a data from your learning experience with the employees in your department and collect this data and analyze that and give it like a feedback for the business, for the next project, And I think it's about me, which I really remember that I used so much time. You have definitely had a unique journey, and I see it. And I want to ask you about what inspires you in this profession. Why do you continue to engage in training people every day?
That is a great question. There's something about seeing the light bulb go off for a person. There's something about when they have that aha moment, when they transition from not understanding or not knowing something to getting it and being able to apply it. And that feels great to me. I love knowing that I can have a direct impact on someone's success, whether that be their professional success, or sometimes that might carry over into things that they're doing in their personal lives. But if I can be the spark that helps someone do better with their lives, I'm all for that. And I know that when we let our lights shine, that we can help others do the same. And that's what I'm here to do. It just feels good. And I feel like that's going to be part of my legacy, is not necessarily what I accomplish, but what I help other people accomplish.
Yeah. Oh my God. It's I think it's the same with me, because I've been in facilitator over 15 years, 20 years ago, I think so. And I remember personally getting into training and development when I was just 16 years old, I think so. Yeah, because honestly, that feels like ages ago. Yes, but at least 20 years ago. But it feels like it was just yesterday. You know what I mean? I think, yes, we are on the same page on this. Yeah, and so at 16, I was leading leadership training for high school students, which we conducted in a youth organization called the Association of Young Leaders, and created with the support of the California Association of Student Councils. For 8 years, I volunteered with youth, helping to develop leadership and communication skills in high school students. And it wasn't until 2007 that I entered the investment business, where I became a business trainer and certified at the International Schools of Business Trainers based on the German training model. That's how my career in training started. But what has always inspired me in this profession, in the spark in people's eyes when they left my training with a clear vision and motivation to change their lives, work more efficiently, implement changes, and inspire their teams to reach new heights. Sometimes was enough a smiling and open eyes for them. I saw it in real life, and it's really inspired me so much, because I love to do my trainings for the teams, for employees, and why I love now public speaking, because it's the same way sometimes to give some insight or something, to talk, to have a discussion with your attendees, and when you see it, it's like a balsam for my heart, something special for me. I love these feelings. I love it, and it's the same, I think so. And you know, like when someone enters a profession, it's crucial to have a mentor or a teacher. Can you tell me who in your life has been or is a mentor, someone who has influenced your career, and why?
There's so many, and I think that's a common theme amongst people who've been in careers as long as we have, right?
Yeah.
You had so many people that have gotten you to a certain point. And when you originally asked that question, when you told me this question was coming, I thought about a relay race and how people pass that torch throughout your career. There are different individuals who help you on that journey, and they kind of pass the torch to the next person. So I haven't really had people who've stuck throughout. There are people who I remain in contact with, but the relationship changes as you move on to different portions of the journey. The first, though, the person that hired me into learning and development, Joy Civic, I still consider her a very strong influence in my life. And I'm always concerned about what is going on. I want to make sure that she's okay forever, because she's one of those people that if it weren't for her, I wouldn't be wherever I am right now, and there's still a lot more to do and a lot more to go in this journey that I plan to take. But if it weren't for her, I probably wouldn't be on this journey that I'm on right now. And then I think about some of the other influences from church to personal lives. There are people that I remain in contact with. Marquise Hodges, he's my college buddy, and he's the person that, even though he's in a completely different field, he helps keep me encouraged, and I can reach out to him and ask him questions from a very objective point of view. He'll be the person that gives me the real, whatever it is. If I'm not doing the right thing, or if I'm thinking about something from a very narrow-minded point of view, he's somebody who will put me in check. My parents are great influences, and they provide that balance of just characteristics. They're completely different people, but they've molded me into who I am today. And then most recently, as I gotten into this leadership development and learning journey, as I really want to do more public speaking, people that encouraged me have been Gene Maripodi, Josh Yavelberg, who I've been partnering with to do some things. And we've actually got a session coming out, a workshop for making people laugh and helping incorporate the humor into learning, development, and design. There's Monica Cornetti with Sententia Gamification. She's been instrumental in helping move me along through this conference circuit. And if it weren't for her, I wouldn't even understand what gamification was all about or how to use it effectively. She's been really supportive. Sadiq Love, he challenged me when I saw him at the training conference that I met you at, when I said, I want to speak in one of these conference rooms. And he said, why is it just a conference room that you want to speak at? Why can't you be on a keynote stage?
Yes.
And I'm like, wow, I never thought about that.
Yes, why? Why
little
not?
Old me, right?
He will be my next guest too.
Yeah. And he said,
Yes.
just make sure that you understand what your message is going to be. What do you want people to know about life, and what message do you want to leave people with? And so those thoughts have resonated with me since I met him. And I remember him each time I take on a different part of this journey and do a different thing. It's because of the words that he gave me then that helped me to look more down the line and not think as small, but to continue to push for bigger things and go further than I imagined I would go. So that's just a few, and I wish all of the names could come out in a podcast, but I could probably spend the whole podcast just giving out names of people who have influenced me.
Yes, just about mentors. We can write like in a podcast, like everybody who you're like grateful, and like you wanna say thank you? Like, yes, it's special from Artrell Williams. We'll do it. Yes, and I'm waiting for you when you will be a keynote speaker, because you will be amazing when, like, yes, it's a great, like, you need to believe on yourself, because, oh my God, You're a brilliant speaker, and I know it, and I saw it. It's an amazing when you have a mentors and you remember people, not just from different industries, like you told about, like your career journey, about like your family, your parents, like from the church, like from different learning and development industries. And these people now, not just like your mentors, or they can be your friends. It's great. And you told about, like you mentioned, Monica from like gamification industry. And like it's good because my next question, I think, like I know you've been professionally involved in gamification and learning for many years, even receiving awards and recognition in this field. Share with us how you got into it, how gamification entered your life. Tell us an exciting story that will make us want to dive into this colorful world too. Yes, because it's a great world.
It's everywhere, and everybody's involved.
Yeah, absolutely.
Whether they know it or not.
I know.
We see gamification.
You know, Artrell, I'm playing in Uno with my kids every day, or I'm playing like in an Xbox, Sony PlayStation at home, like sometimes, not every day, but sometimes. I know a lot of games. It's not just in learning and development, for sure.
Yeah, and I think it was defined to me as using game elements in a non-game context. When you think about most recently, things like the Fitbit. So I had a Fitbit when they came out some years ago. And I recall the feeling of reaching out to other people to say, how many steps did you get today? And the Fitbit app would allow you to connect with other people. You could get in a group. So I could look at mine and see that Tamara has done 15,000 steps today. And I remember waking up in the middle of the night and checking somebody else's steps and seeing that I was only like 40 steps behind them and get up and walk around the house to try to catch up with another person. And that's what we want to do when we employ the gaming elements, the mechanics of various games in our learning design, is to motivate people to do a little bit more, or to be a bit more interested in that topic, to read another book. All of these things that we see in our lives right now are elements of gamification that help motivate us. It's behavioral motivation. We see it in so many different ways, and I want to use it in my learning and development, my delivery and my design. A couple of years ago, at that same conference, as a matter of fact, I attended GameCon, and it was really weird. I went to this conference, and I had told my boss that I was going to this training conference and I was going to learn about gamification, but it was a work trip. You know, in manufacturing, people are so serious sometimes. People are very serious. Engineers and people in my environment. I know it. And you're like, okay, I know there's a soul in there. It's amazing that before class, I could be speaking to someone and we're laughing and facial expressions and all of this. And then you sit them in a classroom and they're straight faced. And I ask them a question and they look at me like I've got two heads. And I'm like, wait a minute, I know you're a human being, but they're sitting there like robots. And it wasn't until this last conference that I went to that I realized that engineers, that's how they're accustomed to learning. You know, you sit in a lot of these college classes because most of them are college educated in their professions. And that's what the learning environment looked like for them when they went through school. You sit down, you listen to someone lecture, stand in front of a PowerPoint, and there was minimal engagement. And I'm trying to encourage that engagement because it's not about who's standing in the front of the room. It's really about somebody who can pull together the experience and knowledge of the people who are in the group. And even a college professor, they don't have all the answers, but they've told the people in the class to go study something, go read something. And so everybody's got their own take on and their interpretations of the information that they've been given. And when they share it, great things happen. And that's what we want to do as facilitators, is get people together to share the information. And then the facilitator can kind of roll it all up and sum it up for them so that they can take away key points. But when we use gamification to do that, then we're increasing their knowledge retention. We're making it a bit more interesting and fun, and we're making it a much more rich learning experience. So I went to this conference, and I was in that mode of, okay, I'm going there for work, but I can't tell anybody at work that I'm having fun. And when I arrived in the gamification room, people were dressed up like wizards and fairies. And I'm like, holy crap, what did I get myself into? And I'm like, I can't do this because, first of all, I'm not even into wizards and fairies. But nextly, I can't even have fun because I'm at a work conference and I have to tell my boss that I learned some stuff. And it took me a while to really ease into the learning through that experience, because they took me through this totally immersive experience in which I realized on day 2 that I was in the story. They created a training that was so immersive that you get the most out of it when you realize that you're in it. And it wasn't just a third-person experience where I was to sit back and watch the learning happen, the teaching happen up front, and then process it in my own way. They made it a first-person experience where I was in the learning. I was in that journey. And once I settled into that, it became so clear to me, and I never wanted to get out of it. And I wanted to create those same types of experiences for my learners, where it's not third person, but a first person experience where they get to play a role in it. They get to be a character in this learning journey. And at the end of it, there's some type of success. Because I love games, but it's not just about games. It's just employing these game mechanics to help motivate people and change their behaviors.
Oh my God, yes, it's a great story. And like from this story, I have a lot of questions, like, you know, to know something deeper about you. My first question, what's your favorite fairy tale or something which you really love from a childhood, or like you love to implement it in your gamification activities? What's your favorite fairy tale? I wanna know.
I can't use what's in my favorite fairy tale because I love Sleepy Hollow, and I love that the Johnny Depp performance in the movie that they came out with. That really resonates with me, and that's one of the darker movies that you can't necessarily. I could do something with it in class, but they don't let me chop off heads during training. So
yes, but maybe one day you create something like, you know, special for your heart, not just for the work, like some gamification mechanics for your personal training without some businesses or like without some companies. Like, yes, it will be your something like a treat, like, you know. It was so funny when you talked about like manufacturing companies and people from manufacturing, because, you know, I was surprised. Lindsay, my platform, we created it in 2018, before pandemic came to our life, because we believed that virtual classroom, it's like a new black, like which you can use, and it will be amazing experience, not just in person, in classroom trainings will work. Like virtual classroom is really a new diamond, and we believe in it. And, you know, when we created this platform, I thought, okay, I think my first customers will be from telecommunication companies, from retail industry, from like banking, like financial institutions, because they're really like so innovative and like something like that. Because like, you know, like these industries accept innovation faster. But I was surprised because my first client was steel company. And I remember it was 2018 when we started our virtual training with the facilitator from steel company. And it was all men, I think 20 men, like in a circles. Like in 2018, we had a circle, not square for video, circles. Like they sat near like the table. All men was like in helmet and like so serious, but they was really so engaged. Like they listen, like they switch on, like everybody switched on the cameras and they was engaged. And when they go to breakout rooms and we saw how they work together in virtual, we thought, oh my God, what happened? And we understood that people from the manufacturing industry, they worked just in one manufacturer, but they did not see another employees from different countries, different cities all over the world, because they just work in one city, in one manufacturer. But when they met people from different countries, different cities, they started to talk, they started to do some exercise, like because we played some role-playing games and everything, and it was so like unexpected. But like it was so great, like feelings when I saw people from manufacturing industries, and they have a great sense of humor, and like, oh my God, it's they have a slang professional, and it was like so great experience. And now they continue to work with the lanes, and like, yes, when I saw the trainings and gamification trainings with these companies, I love it. Like, I really love it. And like, thank you for sharing your story about that. And drawing from your wealth of experience, could you share a memorable like instance where you successfully transform a challenging training program using gamification techniques? I'm curious to hear about like the strategies you employed and the outcomes that's ensued from integrating gamification into the training process, maybe in the company where you're working now, or maybe like your previous experience. Yes, it will be really useful.
You know, the first time I saw it being used to great detail was with the telecommunications provider that I mentioned, in which they created a mission and values map. So you had gamification designed into the process, and this is a wide-scale rollout to teach people across the entire organization, which at the time was about 90,000 people, what the company's mission and values were all about. This was well before I understood what gamification was or even knew that word. I don't even think the word existed back then. But it was such an innovative approach to getting people to learn this stuff. And we would bring large groups of people together around this mission and values map. And then we exchanged dialogue about what we saw on the screen. And it was a facilitated session. And as one of the facilitators, I got to run that session multiple times and see how people responded to learning this way versus the traditional way of them just sitting in a classroom, everybody facing the same direction, watching a person who's standing up there. So that was the very first time I was involved in that type of rollout. When I moved to manufacturing here, I had to put together an anti-harassment session, and we would have to roll that out to the entire organization, which at the time was about 1,600 people. Mm-hmm. I was new in manufacturing, coming from this telecommunications world, and kind of naive to the fact that they didn't know about playing per se in the classroom. Yes. So what I put together was completely different than what they had seen before. And the introduction activity that I still use to this day uses a yarn ball and some cards. I call them scenario cards. And some of the cards are heavier than others. I always have to preface that when I get into the session, because when they hear a card and they're asked to raise their hand if the card applies to them. And some of the cards are kind of heavy, where they say stuff like, I have lost a loved one to cancer, or I have experienced discrimination in my personal life. And I'm only asking them to raise their hands to identify whether those scenarios have impacted them. There are other cards in there too that I've traveled outside of the United States, or I played a musical instrument growing up. So we mix it up a bit, but then I'm putting topics in there that are still to encourage that psychological safety. And I remember your post recently about psychological safety, because that's important when we're training, whether we're using gamification or any other facilitation technique. We want to make sure that we promote that psychological safety. So not all the cards are super heavy, but some of them were. And I started that about 5 years ago. Sometimes I see people that I haven't seen in 5 years, and they say, "Hey, you got the yarn ball? I remember your training." because as they would identify themselves, we would have to pass the yarn ball from person to person, and we created this illustration. So at the end of it, it kind of looks like a web, and we talk about that illustration and what it represents in the context of anti-harassment. And that stands out to people. So even if they don't necessarily remember the key points of the training, they remember that in that training, they felt a certain way, they felt a sense of camaraderie, and we were facilitating that sense of camaraderie, not just in the classroom, but across the entire facility by using a yarn ball, tossing it around, raising our hands, and using these cards to help people get a better sense of who we were as individuals and what we might have been through. So those are a couple of examples of how I've used gamification and seen the impact that it can have on changing the culture in an organization.
Yeah, and you are absolutely right, because some people think that training's enough for implement some skills or like some competencies for like work processes. But like, of course, it's not enough. Training, it's just like 10-20% of the success in your business, in your real life. And you need to have like some points which you like remember in your mind, which will be like always in your brain. And after that, you can repeat it when you remember. If you don't remember, if you are not like in your body, like with muscles, like if you don't do some exercise in your real life, just one time you saw it and just one time you tried, no, it's not enough. And of course, if they remember and if they fix it in the brain, and of course some triggers, they have some special triggers from your like gamification processes in the training process, like in the training in the classroom, like it's a brilliant, it's a great feedback, yes. And when you can see it, of course, you're so excited. Yes, I did it. I love it. It's not about you, Artrell. It's just about me. I love it when I see it or hear it. Yes, and like next question about like gamification trainings, like traditional methods of measuring training effectiveness may fall short in like capturing the full impact of learning initiatives. Let's explore innovative approaches to assessment and how they yield like actionable insights for program improvement. What innovative methods do you use to measure the effectiveness of training and their achievement of learning objectives? How do you ensure these methods provide meaningful insights? Because now we talk that's like not enough like trainings for implemented to the business processes, like, but how you can measure it?
Well, Tamara, I'm guilty. I am guilty of not doing enough of it. There are times where, you know, we roll it out with the careful planning that we need to, in which we evaluate the current situation. We look at the data moving into the training activity, and then we compare that to the data coming out of the training activity. And there's so many different ways that you can do that, and we don't do enough of that. I can honestly say that often the training that we do here especially is reactive to some situation. So if someone gets hurt, for example, then we do some safety training. And chances are, especially in an instance where injury that happens hasn't happened before, for it to happen once, come back and do a training after that, the metric simply is that for 40 years, you didn't have this injury and then you had one. So do you measure it by saying, we trained and we didn't have another one, and I'm not going to be here for 40 years, so I don't know how successful it actually is. So when you take the reactive approach to training different things, whether it be safety or when I worked in customer service, we may have an example of a person who does something they shouldn't have done with a customer over the phone. Maybe they swore at a customer, maybe they hung up on a customer or something like that. If it's not something that's happening on a wide scale, but it happens once and somebody freaks out and says, let's have a training to make sure it doesn't happen again. Well, if it only happened once, it might not have been the best thing to train upon. Now, if you can group that into other behaviors, and you can take this collective set of behaviors and say, over time, we've recognized that in addition to hanging up on customers, we've also seen bad language being used and or poor hold protocol or something like that. And you group those behaviors together, take all of the instances that you had prior to the training and then measure it versus a time after the training, then there may be something there. From a leadership development perspective, I've recently participated in something that I thought was really impactful with Blanchard. We've been using Blanchard for our leadership development for about a year now. And what they've done is evaluate not just you get the smile sheet at the end. You know, we all love the smile sheet. And at the end of it, it feels good to a facilitator to be able to say they enjoyed it. But that's what a lot of people are conditioned to say anyway. And much of the feedback that we get from the participants doesn't necessarily tell us how well they're able to apply the information. It just tells us that they enjoyed being in class. But then when we get into the level 2, level 3, level 4, when we start to look at what do they recall and how do they apply that on the job, and then how does that translate into business results? And this Blanchard program reached out to the subordinates and the direct reports of leaders who went through the training. And there were questions that helped draw out whether others noticed behavioral changes, whether based on the training, the leader came back and changed their behaviors and led the teams more effectively. And there were a great set of questions asked during the surveys that gives us more information than what we typically get. And that's when we can really start to measure the success of it, not just through what the person says they felt about the experience, but what others may even have observed as a result of that experience and what business results have changed as a result of that experience. And if you know specifically what business results you want to change when you go into that experience, then it helps you to be able to evaluate whether those were successful changes, whether the business results after the fact are really driving the success of the organization. And this Blanchard program helped evaluate that.
Thank you so much. Thank you for sharing, because I think it will be really so useful for the listeners, and like some of them like will check like the program and something. Yes, it's great. But like, you know, this question about measuring the learning and development processes is so hard and so complicated, because like a lot of things happen around the people, and it's not just about training and development. I know just once we measured like some kinds of trainings like in Zoom or like in lanes, and we had like a customer's reports and customers' feedback about quality of the trainings like in Zoom and lanes. Because like we implemented like in Lane some gamification mechanics, like some role-playing games, some like, I don't know, moderation, brainstorming, and it's so simple and like in one window. And we've got that people back to the trainings in Lanes like in 85%. In Zoom, they back just like 70%, like to return to the programs, some kind of. And like, we know that's like the feedback was, yes, we love it. And like some feedback when you are engaging in some learning programs, it means you start to work in your skill set. You start to develop your new competencies when you're engaging. If it's just lecture or like webinar where just like a listener, not doing something, just like, of course, the result will be different. Like, it's really true. And like, you know, next type of my question will be about your personality and about learning and development, because it's a mix. And Artrell, you know, I've been watching comedy for many years. Yes, I'm really like a big fan of this type of interaction. And it's one of my favorite humor styles. And I'll honestly tell you, throughout my entire professional career, I have not met many people who combine education, like learning, and people development, gamification, and stand-up comedy in like all in one. You know what I mean? Meeting you was like hitting the jackpot. Yahoo! Yes, and I dream of doing stand-up comedy myself, and one day you will definitely have to come to one of my shows. I'm not confident, but right now we are talking about you and your unique abilities. You are a stand-up comedian and you inspire me. Where does this love for humor come from, and how do you develop like in this direction? Where did you learn all this? Tell me, please.
So I've always had this interest in stand-up comedy. I've listened for many, many years. And when Eddie Murphy came out with the popular stuff, the really good stuff from way back in the day, I was too young to be listening to it. I should not, at the age that I was, I should not have been listening to Eddie Murphy raw or delirious. But I had no idea. I thought that was, as a person in the South and just a little country boy, I still consider myself just a little country boy. And I never imagined that we could do that. I thought that that was a California or a New York thing. Yeah. We had to live in those types of places.
Somewhere there, not here, not with me, yeah.
After I moved to Buffalo, I found out that there was an amateur comedy scene where they have open mics and such, and you could go out and watch people, and anybody could go up and they could be as funny or not funny as they are, but it only lasts for about 4 minutes and then it's over. When I decided to get up and do it for the first time, I wasn't doing a routine. I was just running my mouth. I was just up there talking about things that I thought was funny. And I thought that's what stand-up comedy was all about. I didn't realize the repetition that goes into it, or even the art of doing stand-up. I didn't realize that some of the jokes that I had heard comics tell on their special were jokes that they had been working on for many, many years. And there was this one particular joke that I used to tell in my training classes about how I got my job with the telecommunications provider down in Charlotte. And I would tell it over and over and over again. For every class, I would tell them about this experience of me going in and asking for an application, and the lady telling me that we don't fill out applications. You go online and you do it, on the computer. But I still had that old school mentality where they say, show up at a place and say, hi, I'm interested in getting a job here. So I kept going into this place, and the lady kept telling me, you need to go online. And I would go online, but I would get no response. So I'd go back into the place. And that was my parents competing with the modern day, because my parents were of the really old school that would say, you put on a shirt and tie and you go into a building and you say, hey, I'm looking for a job, And this lady was telling me, no, that's not how it works anymore. And so I set it up a certain way. And then on the last time in the story that I tell, and it kind of happened like this in real life too, I said I went in there. I asked the lady, hi, I know you told me to go online. I just wanted to find out if you guys are hiring and blah, blah, blah. And she says, hold on for a moment. And she goes and gets security on me. That part of it didn't happen, but I was trying to set that up. And I was using some of the elements of comedy. In that particular story, I used what's called the rule of 3. And so I talked about the first time I went, she told me to go do it online. I came back later. She told me again. The third time I went, she went and got security for me. And I think I said something to the effect of, is there anybody that I can speak to about a job? And on the third time, she says, I do have somebody who you can speak to today. And that's when she got security on me. So,
yes, special guest.
Right. It was a cadence that I had picked up from watching comedy and probably even from listening to pastors and other speakers. But I didn't realize that that was a comedic technique called the rule of 3. And we see it in many other aspects of our lives. So as I started to learn that there were so many of those, there's the act outs where you see people doing all of these things on stage. There's using hyperbole and similes and metaphors. There's so many comedic devices that are being used, and they're being used with intent. And the more you understand how to use them, the more effective that comedy may be. Well, as I started to learn about that in the comedic world, I realized it also held true in the presentation and training world, that if I put the same level of effort into delivering that joke that I was trying to tell to my training classes, or all of the other training concepts that I would deliver over and over and over again, as opposed to what I was doing on the comedy stage was just going up and saying whatever was on my mind at the time. Do what you do with your training, Artrell, and practice it over and over and over again. It doesn't matter if they've heard the same joke, but chances are they haven't, because it's not the same people coming to each of the performances, especially not when it's open mic. So it doesn't matter if you say the same stuff over and over again, because each time you say it, you get better at it and you understand better opportunities to deliver that. You may add something to it that makes it even more impactful. And that's what I talk about now in the workshops and seminars that we do, is simply put the same level of effort into putting together what's usually only about 5 minutes worth of comedy. For people who deliver training classes, I know you've done training for at least an hour. I know you've done presentations that have gone on longer than that, workshops that 3.5, 4 hours, maybe even multiple days. So if we practice our comedy, which only lasts for about 5 minutes, the same way we practice our training delivery, you're going to be good at it. And so for people like you who say, I always wanted to get up there and do it, I encourage you to do it, because you're funnier than you think. And if you put forth the same preparation and effort into that 5 minutes as you do for the 2 hours or 2 days that you already know how to deliver, you can't help but be successful.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh my God, great advice. Not just for listeners, for me too. And you need to do it over and over and over and over. Yes, and it will be your success. It's true. And thank you for this recommendation. Just like it's true, 5 minutes of comedy, like every training, like you can find some, like, you know, some story, some interesting comedian story from your life. And I know some special trainings. I heard about it. I've never seen it in the United States, but in Europe, I saw some really training program for people who wants to be a comedian. And my good friend, she's Armenian. She graduated like a special training like for comedians. And she told me like some interesting rules about like comedian. When you are in stand-up, you need to tell the story which audience knows, like 95% will be in the same page with you. Like, okay, about like relationship, like people are in relationship. Okay, like, I don't know, you're a mom or you was a child, and it's like in the same page. And some special interesting rules which you can implement to your story, and it will be funny for everybody, because like we are in the same page in some simple things, like not just in like our life or something. It's so simple, yes, and I love it. I'll try to do it in my next conference when I will be speaking. I promise you, Artrell Williams will be some special story with like my sense of humor. I hope so, and I will tell them it's Artrell Williams told me that I need to practice. Sorry. I practice. I don't know. Is it so funny or no? I need to practice. Yes, thank you for that. And, you know, humor can be a valuable asset in the learning environment. Let's discuss the principles guiding its integration into trainings and its positive effects on participant engagement. What key principles do you follow when integration, like humor into the learning processes, and how does it contribute to increased engagement and retention of like material? Maybe some tips, like really like practice tips to our listeners.
There are quite a few, and you have to mix it up. It's based on your audience. When you know who your audience is, it makes it a bit easier to do something that is going to cater to their preferences. So you do need to understand that type of thing. And then you have to understand yourself. So in the session that I did at Training Magazine back in February, one of those principles is persona. And so persona is two-way, where you need to know yourself and you need to know your audience. Knowing yourself allows you to be able to deliver in the way that works for you and your personality, as opposed to doing it somebody else's way. I'm not the most bubbly, energetic person. However, one of my friends, Sherry Prindle, she is that type of person. And she mentioned she'll fall on the floor and roll around and all of that, and it works for her. But if I were to try to do that, because the rest of my personality is relatively subdued, it comes across as weird and awkward. So when you know yourself well enough, and if I've got a deadpan delivery, then stick to that and give deadpan deliveries throughout the process. If we're talking about the telling jokes per se, or standing up in front of the audience. But incorporating humor isn't just about delivery, but it's also the design. And you can design humor into your learning, whether it be in person or even e-learning. You can design it in a way that gets people's attention, because that's ultimately what you're trying to do, is get their attention. If I'm in front of a group of engineers, I don't need to be that bubbly person. If I try to compensate by bringing up the energy in the room because of what I see from them, and I'm thinking, okay, since they're down here, I need to try to bring them up here, it doesn't always work that way. So I still have to understand my audience well enough to know when I might go too far or when I might make them uncomfortable with what I'm trying to do. So know yourself, know your personality. You also have to know your message. You want to be clear on whatever it is that you're there to deliver, because you're not there to have a stand-up comedy routine. You're there to help people learn something. And most people, when they come to a training class, that's what they come for more so than anything else. It's great when they can have a good time, but they actually want to walk away knowing something more than they knew when they got there, or being able to do something better than they were able to do when they got there. So you got to stick to the message that you've come there to deliver, and don't allow humor to distract from that. And I've seen so many people that are so caught up in trying to tell jokes, so caught up in trying to show their audience just how funny that they are, that they lose that same audience because they're not there to teach. They're just there to make people laugh. You got to stick to the message. And then you start getting into, how do I create humor from the situations? And being present and in the moment helps tremendously, because you can make light of something that has happened. You don't necessarily have to come with a set of jokes or a routine to perform while you're up there, but just make sure you pay attention to what's happening in the room. Pay attention to what has happened at that conference, or the weather the day that you arrived in this new city that you've never been to before. And then use that to help people understand how you feel about it. And that fourth thing that I use there is the attitude towards it. So once you make an observation, then that's where you get to tell them how you feel about that observation. And being able to describe your emotions helps tremendously, because you can exaggerate those emotions to let people get a sense of how you feel about that thing. But then you can exaggerate it so much that that's when it becomes funny. For me to just say, I am so happy to be on a webinar with you here today, there's probably not a whole lot of humor in that. But if I say, I've prepared for this meeting with you, Tamara, for the last 2 weeks, and I couldn't even sleep last night because I was so excited to be able to talk to you.
Yes.
And I've been looking for the virtual rose emoji on the computer because I couldn't wait to be able to pass that virtual rose and say, thank you for inviting me on your podcast. And something as simple as that, being able to exaggerate the emotion, then allows the humor to start coming out. And we have to allow for the humor. So another one of those key points is give people permission to laugh. Because for those engineers, I now know that they don't know it's okay to have a good time in class, because that's not what they're accustomed to. But if I start out my session by letting them know that this is going to be the type of session in which I am going to ask for feedback from you, that I want to hear your thoughts and your ideas, and I want you to have a good time. And along the way, I want us to be able to laugh at those things that we may find funny, because the height of listening follows the end of laughter. And so if you can get people to laugh, as soon as they stop laughing, you know that they're paying attention. So if you can get their attention in that way, even if they didn't hear the joke or if they don't know what was so funny to everybody else, you got to stop doing whatever it was that was distracting you and pay attention because everybody just laughed and you missed the joke. Right?
Yes, absolutely.
So you've captivated them when you've taken the opportunity to use the laughter to your advantage.
Yes. And like, I love your first point. It was many years ago. I tried to understand who I am. What's like, yes, I love some different kind of style, like a facilitator, but we are all the different. And when you know your personality, it means it will come from your heart, from your soul, and it so resonates with the people because you're so natural. And yes, I love it. And all your points, like, yes, I can use and listeners can use in not just in learning professional, not just in training, but like everywhere. Yes, and I absolutely love it. And like in the end, maybe of this part of your like life experience, like, you know, challenging scenarios during training sessions can test even the most seasoned trainers. And can you please share a particular challenging scenario you encountered during a training session and how you successfully navigated it while keeping the audience engaged and motivated?
That is such an interview question.
Yes.
That is one of those behavioral interview questions that you get. You're like, okay, make sure you give the situation, the action, and the result.
Yes. I love it. Like, yes. Thank you. Share, please.
But I'm intimidated now. I'm like, am I going to get this job? I think back to one of the sessions that I did with this anti-harassment. And this was probably 3 months into my career here at this new place. And to give you a bit more context, we wear uniforms here. So people out in the audience all kind of look the same. They're wearing their uniforms and some of them have their hats on and things like that. And I think everybody had a beard. So to be in the front of that and observe all of that. And this was a room that at the time had about 80 people in it. And it was about 5 o'clock in the morning. So I know that they had already worked a full shift and they would have rather had been anywhere else than sitting in that classroom listening to this voice for 2 hours to tell them that they're not supposed to beat people up at work, right? But I got to a point in the session where I asked the question, what are some of the mistakes that can be caused when we allow our behaviors to be impacted by our perspectives? And one of the people in the back of the room, I didn't know who it was, but I heard this voice come from over here. And they said, people can get killed. And I took a moment. I didn't know if this was somebody who was trying to disrupt the class, because we get that. I didn't know if this person was just trying to be funny or what their angle was with that response. But as I took a moment and thought about that situation and thought about what we're talking about and the fact that, hey, this is a manufacturing facility where safety is a main concern. And then the nature of our environment in the world today, I realized that this person was telling the truth. Whether they meant it to come across as truth or not, as I stepped back and I thought about how can I not get so distracted? Because there's some things that an audience person may say, a participant may say, that we just kind of ignore. There are times where you're just like, whatever, you're stupid. I'm not going to listen to that. Let me move on or let me disregard that comment. But I knew that all 80 people in the room heard that comment, and it really was a valid response. And I'm pretty good at spinning whatever response that somebody's given me because I've been in front of a lot of different audiences at this point. And so I do know how to bring it back home. And when I took that statement and I said, you know what, you're absolutely right. And I understand completely where you're coming from. And then I went on to talk about how that was a very true statement, and that's something that we want to avoid. That was literally the reason why we were sitting in that room that morning, is because we want people to be mindful of their emotions and their responses to the things that may happen, because we do want to stay safe in this environment. And so it was a tough comment at the time. By far not the toughest classroom that I've had or anything like that, but it makes me think about the experience of being able to take a difficult statement, process it in the moment, not react to it, and then help bring it back to the topic that we came there to discuss.
Mm-hmm. Yes, thank you for sharing. It's like so deep for me, and like, yes, thank you. And like in the end of professional questions, because, you know, I have not just professional questions, and I told you that my podcast, it's not about just like career journey. It's about like lifestyle, about people who are in the learning and development industry, and who's really like absolutely like great personality. We know that technology is reshaping the landscape of training and development for sure, and I like to know your opinion about that. That's what role do you envision technology playing in the future of training and development industry, and how do you currently leverage technology in your practice? I'm interested in hearing about any innovative technological solution you employ to enhance learning outcomes.
Yeah, well, I am totally scared out of my mind about AI.
I know, because I remember that you are from old school.
Well, it's not just the AI, but what the AI allows people to be able to do and what the AI itself can do. And the scary part is really in knowing that at some point, if I want to gather a bunch of email addresses and send them links that will direct them to adult websites, and AI can do that while I'm asleep, you know? And so whatever bad actors decide to do with certain AI tools, it's not the AI doing it. The AI will only be trained to do what we tell it to do. But on the flip side of that, there are a lot of people out there who come up with stuff that if you're not a bad actor, you really would never have imagined, from hacking and things like that we see happening these days. It used to be that somebody had to sit in front of a computer and do this, and they had to figure out the cheat code or the way into organization system. Whereas now they can just program the AI to do it and move on to the next bad thing that they want to do while the AI is over here doing that one bad thing that they told it to do. I'm cognizant of the potential that happens. On the flip side, we can also use it for a lot of great things, and it will be and has been used for a lot of great things. So AI is one of those tools that we all need to know about. We need to understand. And then you got to figure out how to discern what's real and what's not so real. I've been using some of the large language models. I was trying to think of the actual term to sound to your listeners like I know what I'm talking about, the LLMs.
Yeah.
Using those tools like ChatGPT, which give us terms and words and papers, and I can create a business plan. I just tell it exactly what kind of business I want to start, and I can tell it to give me 6 pages, 7 pages, 12 pages, whatever I want, and it will do that for me. And that helps reduce the amount of time that I would have to spend creating such a thing, because it'll spit such a thing out in seconds. I still should go back and read it to make sure that everything in there is accurate and is what I need it to be. But it can reduce the amount of time that we spend working on certain tasks dramatically, because that same business plan might take me 3 weeks to write. Mm-hmm. I might run into situations where I just can't think of what words to put on the page. Like my brain is totally fried and I have no idea what I'm supposed to write right now. And then you just say, finish this sentence, and it'll finish that sentence. And it may not finish it the way that I would have myself or may have wanted it to finish, but it gives me something to build upon. So at that point, all I'm doing is changing words instead of creating new words. So we do that with the language stuff. And I've also been using some of the graphic tools. So you can tell it that I want a simulated Zoom screen with a white female on the left and a black male on the right who has a bald head and 3 posters on the wall behind him. And it will give it something similar to what's happening with you and me right now.
And you don't need to use designers. You don't need to... Yes, like it's just several seconds, like just 1 minute and voila, it's here. Yes.
So when we understand how to use that type of thing, we can incorporate it in learning and development in our design. I've seen it being used in the design, and I've even dabbled a little bit, but I'm nowhere as good as some of my friends are in creating images for e-learning modules and for flyers and job aids and handouts and such that make those learning tools more impactful. So it's being used that way. I've seen video models of it now, so you can easily create videos, and there's so much more that will be done with it. Anybody who has not yet begun to use those types of tools or learn those tools needs to do so right away, because it's also hard to determine what's real and what's not real anymore. I have an awesome picture of a former president in the boxing ring. It's a great picture. I'm not even going to say who it is or anything like that.
Yes.
I have no other emotion behind it other than this is an amazing picture of something that never happened. But in that image, it looks like it happened. And at some point, as we start to have that with videos and pictures and such, we have to be able to tell what has really happened and when someone is either trying to intentionally deceive us or manipulate us in whatever way, and then determine whether you want to buy into that or if you want to just ignore the notion. Because I'm not going to read the story about this president as he stepped into the boxing ring and took on 3 fighters in the same night. But I think it's entertaining to see the picture.
Yeah.
Whatever the story behind that may be. So I just caution people that, AI is going to be one of those things that we see a lot more of in a lot of ways. And it's easier to get an understanding of what it is and what it does, and then use your own discernment as to whether you want to be manipulated by it. But you can also use it to do the good manipulation, right? If I want to encourage my listeners or my learners to change their behaviors in whatever way, if I'm trying to get them to understand the importance of creating a safe work environment, I can create some awesome pictures of things that never actually happened to help encourage them to do that. So
yeah. And like for sure, the technology, like you told about like everything, like so interesting points about like why it's like so dangerous for our lives. And like, yes, you told it's a little about our fears, but like we know that some kind of technology, not just AI, of course, like mobile apps, video creation or like different kinds of stuff will help in learning and development to save our time, our money, like automate some processes, like collect the data to analyze, like everything. Like if you will implement, like you can save the forest, like trees, because like you don't need to print, like I think we designed a special app for offline training many years ago, like in Lanes. It was first module called like offline trainings, and it was like mobile app for hangouts, like all materials which you give to your employees in your training in person, like your handouts, like your feedback forms, like different kind of like role-playing games. And you printed it, and you don't save the forest. It's really not something like green in our life, like. Yes, and we did like mobile app special for facilitators and attendees, and it is working so great. It helps to facilitator to save the money, to save the time, to print something, to prepare something, because it's just like one click and all materials go to the, like, it's a notification in mobile app. Of course, it saves the time, and it's so simple to use it for your attendees because they know how to use their iPhone or Android, not just for like watch the video or something, but it's so simple to use it, like because we use it like every day. It's how technology can support learning and development industry, and it's not just about like something which we are afraid or something. Like, of course, if you know how to use technology in learning and development, it's a great opportunities. And I love to play with AI. You know, you saw in my LinkedIn, I played sometimes with AI pictures, and I want to look at myself, how it would be if I would live in, like, I don't know, 18th century, like the dresses and like this era is really interesting for me. Yes, I love to work with AI and play with that. Like, if you feel that it's like a game, you're in the game.
If I may add to the technology piece, because it would do me no service to not mention the game that you referenced earlier with the award and such. And just to give your listeners a little context on that, I went through a gamification certification program with Sententia, and I created a card game to help teach manufacturing processes. This was a no-tech solution, and that's what it was recognized for at the conference that we were at in New Orleans. But then I partnered with Bundle AR, and we started to add augmented reality to it. So when we talk about other applications of technology in learning and development, we want to be able to bring the information that learners need to them at the point of their need. And this augmented reality helps in doing so, because on the app, I can open it up and they've got what's called experiences. I created a markered experience where I use the playing cards as markers to launch experiences through the app. And they're augmented reality experiences. So I can show people 3D models of our equipment and our products. Here it's tires. So we've got tire building machines and tires that I've got 3D models of in the experience that we can manipulate and help people learn about those products and services. We've got information that can launch so that augmented experience can pull up a website. I can put it over a breaker panel and show people what the different switches in a breaker panel do using this augmented experience. So there's a VR piece, the virtual reality, that you'll see more of. But I think when we get to the mixed reality, where there's a combination of virtual reality and augmented reality there, and I'd be able to hold up something in front of my face and still see my back wall and things behind me, but also be able to manipulate objects in front of me. When used properly, they can be great learning tools. And we've already begun to explore how to use those here in my facility. And I know a lot of other organizations are using VR, AR, and other types of reality to help people understand how to do things without putting them in unsafe environments. And that's what it's really all about for us, is if I can get them to learn how to do things in a safe classroom environment before I send them to the production environment with this heavy machinery that can be sometimes dangerous, then I'm getting them a little bit further as I guide them through that learning experience.
Thank you for this example from your experience. Yes, it's really true. And you can mix your like real life and you can mix technology, and like if you feel and you know about your audience that it will help them to do something better, it's okay. You can use it. Like it's simple. And could you please give the only one important career advice to our listeners in learning and development, like for their career journey or something like that?
I've been working on my keynote speech. So this is hopefully not a spoiler, but words, when I think of Sardik's message and what do I want to tell people? What do I want people to know as a result of a conversation with me? I recommend eating your green eggs and ham. What does that really mean, right? I learned how to read that book when I was 5 years old. That was the first book, Green Eggs and Ham, that I learned how to read all the way from start to finish. But it wasn't until I was about 35 years old that I realized the impact that it had on my life, because I live by those words and have throughout my life. I won't say that I don't like something that I haven't tried. Now, there may be some things that I just don't want to try
Yeah.
for various reasons, right?
But like, it is what it is.
But what it taught me is to keep my mind open to the possibilities, to understand that I can eat them here or there, and the experience there could be completely different than it was when I ate them here. So even if you've tried something once, as they say, and you didn't like it, that doesn't necessarily mean you didn't like it. I can't say that I don't like schnitzel because the first time I had it, it was kind of tough and it wasn't done right, because I had it another time at a different place and it was an amazing experience, right? So I try to help people understand that if you keep your mind open to the possibilities, try new things, get out and experience new experiences, whether it be the foods, the music. I love cultures, and that's why I travel, is because I do know that things are so different in different places. And I love to be able to share that with people who may not have gone. For someone who was as apprehensive about going to Germany as I was in the beginning, if my words can encourage them to go because I had an amazing experience there, I hope that they will go. I went to a Toastmasters meeting in Germany, and it just so happened that that night that I was their English night. They do it once a month. So I could understand, because otherwise I would have had no idea what was going on. But because they did that night in English, I got to watch some of the native German speakers go up and do their presentations in English, and many of them were afraid to do so. It was a bit intimidating by having a native English speaker in the room, so some of them were even apprehensive about getting up on stage. As I heard them, though, I realized that many of them speak better English than native English speakers that I know, and I encouraged them to continue building that skill. If you are really good at speaking in German because that is your native language, then of course you're going to be a bit self-aware when you're speaking a language that isn't your native language, because you want to be as good in that other language as you are in your native language, and it's never going to happen. But they were really good, and I knew if they were as good speaking in their native language as they were in my native language, then they must be amazing in German. And so when we take that concept of eating those green eggs and ham, trying new experiences, not being discouraged by the pitfalls and challenges of life, but to continue to push through, get to the end, and maybe you will find something different that you do like and can share with others. That's the message that I would like to leave with others.
Oh my God, I want to cry now, because this advice is special for me. I'm not native English speaker. And my professional English started just like 1 year and 6 months ago. And it's not so long trip, like not life journey, like just 1 year and 6 months. And where I am, people don't know how I'm feeling every day when I start to record my podcast, because I'm not native speaker. When I'm speaking Russian, because it's my native language, and second, my Armenian language, and third, my English, it's different. And I cannot be like so natural in English, but I do it like every day. I do something like step by step, and I try it, and I feel that I love people, and I love to talk and to develop with people. I cannot live without people, because it's not just about my career or about like my professional. It's all about me, like people around me. It's my lifestyle. And this advice, it's like, yes, I feel it and I accept it, and it's really work idea, right? Like something which work so good. Yes.
Well, I shared it. I shared that because I understand that what you're doing with this podcast is an amazing thing. The fact that you have decided to do a podcast in English, even though English isn't your native language, is great. And I want you to continue to do it. I want to encourage you to keep bringing on people and sharing your experiences with them and letting them share their experiences with you. But I'm really glad that you're doing this, and I don't want you to stop.
Thank you so much. Yes, I promise. I have a lot of new ideas. Like today, I started to talk to you. And my brain is working because I need to listen to you and continue our conversation, because I need to okay, you told about that and I need to ask you about that. Yes, I have several questions which I prepared, but it's like a live conversation. It's like a dialogue. But in my mind, because you talked a lot about some gamification processes, something about humor sense. And now I found in my brain new ideas for next podcast. I want to change some style because now I have several episodes and I want to do it. I want to make it better and better. And oh my God, yes. Artrell told this one about, okay, group, how I can implement to my podcast. Okay, I will do. Can you imagine? And I promise I will do, and it will be a new show. Because it's all about us. Yes, thank you for your support always. And you started to talk about art and about everything what happens in different cultures. Let's talk about art and its role in your life. I know you are deeply passionate about music and all things creative. How does this passion contribute to your development in your profession and career? How does it work with you? And what kind of art do you love? What kind of music do you love? Yes, share with us.
That's a whole lot of questions. That's a whole new podcast. I don't know if you needed to have us clap again.
Maybe, okay. Just two ideas. Tell us.
Yeah, I played instruments when I was younger. I was a pretty good trumpet player, and I switched from trumpet to tuba my senior year in high school. And I was pretty good on tuba too. I went to high school. Well, I mentioned playing trumpet in high school, switched to tuba my senior year, did my scholarship audition for college on the tuba instead of the trumpet, which my mom thought was a horrible idea, and then ended up going to college to play the tuba. I didn't go to college to play the tuba. I went to college to become Eddie Murphy. But
yes.
While I was there, I was also playing the tuba. So that allowed me to perform. And it wasn't until later in life that I realized that type of performance prepared me to be able to stand up in front of classrooms of people and speak. It also gave me the creativity that we need as facilitators to be able to do what we do. There are things that happen in our training lives that we could never anticipate, and you have to improvise. And that's what musicians often have to do, is improvise their way in certain situations. So when the AV doesn't work, or when the lights go off in the middle of your podcast conversation, there are times where we seriously have to adapt to a situation. And I learned to be able to do that through my experience playing music. After I got out of college, I stopped playing. There just wasn't as much demand to hear someone sit and play a tuba. So, and I had no intention of continuing to play music after college because I didn't know that I could. I didn't realize that there were so many outlets that would allow for a tuba player or a trumpet player or whatever else I wanted to play. But there's lots of music out there. And now I help my daughter. Because I played the tuba and the trumpet, I learned bass clef and treble clef. And we got her started on piano when she was 3. And I was able to help guide her through the left hand and the right hand of playing the piano based on my experience playing bass clef and treble clef. So I live vicariously through her when it comes to music. And my youngest son is 6 years old. Well, he will be in a couple weeks from now. And he started playing when he was 4. And he's pretty darn good too. He has no fear. And I live vicariously through them in watching them as they use these experiences to grow in their own lives. And just this past Sunday for Easter, he got up and did a performance in front of the church. When I was young, I also did performances in front of the church. And so when I look back upon how I became a trainer, your first question, it really was using what I learned in my childhood to build the confidence to get up in front of groups of people and do what I do and what we do. And now, because I don't play instruments, I usually exercise that creativity either through the comedy or through cooking. And those are my two outlets. So if I'm not working, I'm usually either trying to do some type of comedy or I'm cooking something in the kitchen.
Yes, it's great stories. And like, I understand that the kids will help us to support and remember about us too, like about your experience with the like instruments, and now you support your kids like in their experience. It's a great when you can combine it, and like, yeah. And to continue about your life experience, it's really interesting. We talked a lot about your sense of humor, but like, what helps you maintain a sense of humor despite all the challenging situation life throws your way?
I know that things are okay. At the end of the day, it's really all okay. Like, bad stuff happens, and I've experienced some pain. It's not comparable to some people's pain, and sometimes it's kind of hard to even tell someone that you feel like you've done something hard or been through something challenging when you hear about other people's stories and experiences. I'm pretty sure you've been through some things that many people can't even imagine, and would question how you could even be here today knowing that this is something that happened in your life. So just knowing that it's not that bad helps. When I was in Orlando at the conference, and there were way more people in the room than I imagined, and it was way too hot, and I was pouring down in sweat, and the computer didn't want to work the way that I needed it to work. At the end of the day, I'm like, you know what? In 40 minutes from now, it's going to be over, and I will move on. And today's life makes it even easier to do that, because you could be a superstar today, and nobody would even remember you a week from now.
Absolutely. It's my, it's my mantra every day.
So just go ahead and fall on your face.
Yes,
it doesn't matter.
Yes, they forget you.
Yeah, nobody really cares. They cared right then, and then tomorrow something else direct their attention elsewhere. So things just don't matter as much as we sometimes try to make them out to. And when I think about all of the things that we can find humor in, because once again, it's really how you feel about it. The board behind you may not necessarily be funny, but if I talk about the meticulousness of this friend that I have who likes to carefully place cultural items behind her on a Zoom meeting, then maybe we can find some humor in something like that. And if you look for humor, you can usually find it.
Yes, great. I love it. And I remember about Eddie Murphy, but maybe is there one particular book or movie or piece of art that you could recommend to my listeners, something that has deeply resonated with you and influenced your perspectives on life? Maybe some movie with Eddie Murphy.
Yeah, you got movies and books and such. I think of The Craving Mind by Judson Brewer, Dr. Judson Brewer, in case somehow he hears this podcast and like, wait a minute, why did you not refer to me as doctor? This is a book about neuroscience. And it kind of put a lot of things into perspective for me, because he talked about the flow state too. But when you think about what makes our brains do what we do, what makes us do what we do, and how we can form our own habits by taking tiny steps, I'm really interested in neuroscience. And
me too.
Yeah. So for those who geek out on that type of thing, because I mentioned gamification and adding mechanics that help people change their behaviors and things like that, that's all neuroscience. Comedy, I had to know neuroscience. I have to understand what makes people laugh and what happens when they laugh. And understanding those things can help you deliver a little bit better product. So for those who geek out on neuroscience, The Craving Mind by Dr. Judson Brewer is one of those things.
Yes. And could you please share a moment in your life that stands out as one of your happiest? It could be a childhood memory or anything significant. Share with us.
Was that in the list of questions you gave me ahead of time? I must not have read that far down in the email. That's a tough one.
Yes, I love these questions. Like sometimes I'm thinking that one day my podcast will be about lifestyle of people and what we can share, because we need to share happiest moments and like something which really inspired us and like make our life like so happy and better. Yes.
I'll say, looking back at my oldest son is 26 years old now. And I realized back when he was a baby just how incredible kids are, and the fact that they will often live up to whatever expectations we set for them. If we help guide them through this experience of life, then their potential is pretty much limitless in most instances. And I remember one day when he was probably about 3 to 4 months old, however old a baby is when they start to lift their head and start to roll over and things like that.
It depends, but like I remember my babies on this age, it was like through, like it's near 3-4 months. Like sometimes it's like when they start to stand, take it, like it could be at 1 month old. Like it depends on babies. Like, but this period, yeah.
And to watch the resilience of someone who didn't know many things right then, but knowing that he was going to grow into someone who did know more things. And he just sat there and kept trying to lift his head and kept trying to move it over. And you could tell that he was learning from that experience. He learned that as he tilted his head further back and leaned over, that eventually that helped him flip onto his back. And as you watch a baby develop in general, that resilience that they have of falling down over and over again, or not being able to do a certain thing that they've got in their minds, but the determination, when they get to the age where they try to open the fridge and you see them over and over trying to reach up there and grab that handle and pull it, and they don't know why, but it must look like fun when they see their parents or whoever else doing it. So the resilience, watching my kids grow up and seeing them put forth the effort to become what they are today, and knowing if they continue to put forth that effort, that they will grow into amazing human beings. And I'm just here to help guide them through that experience. I was put on this earth to help them be whatever it is that they're going to be. And hopefully, when I go back to the relay race analogy that I used in the beginning, hopefully I can pass a torch to them that's further along in the race than I was when I started, and they'll run further and they'll pass a torch to somebody else. And at some point, maybe that legacy all leads back to me. And if 100 years from now or something like that, people are able to look back and say, this happened because of a guy back in the 1900s named Artrell Williams, I would be thrilled by that. So to answer the question, watching my kids go has been a remarkable thing in my life, and I wouldn't trade that experience for anything.
Thank you so much. Thank you for sharing. And in the end of my podcast, I have 3 questions. It's the same questions for all my guests. And first of that, like, what was the last thing you asked ChatGPT?
Today, I actually...
But like, true story, please.
True story.
Yes.
I asked it to give me an outline for a 1-hour session about using AI tools, because I'm going to be delivering a session to an ATD chapter in about 3 weeks. So that's the thrill. It took a lot of the guesswork out of it, because now I have an outline and I can just kind of build from there. Sorry
but
for anybody who listens to this.
But about that, I can be your ChatGPT. You can ask me about outline and AI implement to learning and development, like processes or something like that. Yes, it's a great. Thank you for sharing. Tell your favorite quatrain, or maybe some lyrics, like which you really favorite, and explain why exactly you choose it.
Yeah, I thought about the quatrain, and the music that I listen to for the most part, after about 3 bars, there will be some swear words. So like as I comb through my memory banks, I'm like, I don't know 4 whole bars with no swearing.
Yeah.
But there is this one lyric. There's actually 2 from 2 different songs, very short. One of the lyrics that I've always lived by, per se, is if you stay ready, you don't have to get ready. And this is from a rap song that was out in the 90s. If you stay ready, you don't have to get ready. And then there's another one in a song called In Due Time by my favorite group in the world, Outkast. And he says, you're looking to be a butterfly without the caterpillar. And that resonates with me because that's what a lot of people want to do in this life, is that they want to just start flying and bypass that stage of growth and development. And if we can take our time to allow ourselves to be the caterpillar for as long as we're supposed to be a caterpillar, we'll become a much better butterfly at the end of it.
Oh my God, I love it. I want to save it. You should send me this song, and I need to listen it. I love it. Great lyrics. Yes, thank you. And ask the next guest. Here's how it goes. Every guest gets to throw a question at the next guest. I believe it adds a unique touch, allowing the previous guest to pose a question to the next one. And last week, Kevin Alsner was my wonderful guest. It's a person from AI videos industry. His question to you. Are you ready to answer?
I'm ready to answer.
Yes? Okay, great. Here is it.
I don't even know if I should give a comedic response or my actual
you're a comedian
response.
Person. give us example. It's okay for you. It's your lifestyle.
When I think about what I don't have the data to prove, I would have to say that women are actually alien beings. You guys were brought from somewhere else to be here to support us as men in different ways. But I think you're from a different world. And it goes well beyond that whole women are from Venus, that are from Mars thing.
Yes.
There is something different in your DNA that will sometimes allow us to have very spirited debates about things like which way the toilet paper should go over.
Oh my God. Yes, you don't have the data about that, but yes. I think it's true. It's true. And yes, thank you for this answer, and thank you for sharing that. And well, then I suggest asking you a question for the next guest.
So I'd like to know from this person, and it relates to the same question that he asked me 2 years ago, if there were 3 key points that he had to put on his tombstone or his epitaph about what he left on this world, what would he want those things to be? What 3 main things would he like for people to remember about him long after he's gone?
Yes, great. And guess what? We've done.
Look at the time. Look at the time.
Oh my God, 2 hours. But Artrell, I want to talk to you more and more. I have, I think, 20 more questions about you, about your lifestyle, about your life experience, about your career journey, everything. And so, we conclude another extraordinary episode. A heartfelt thank you to each and every one of you for joining us on this illuminating journey through our podcast. Your unwavering support is deeply appreciated, and I'm incredibly grateful for the opportunity to learn and grow alongside you. Artrell, thank you for your wisdom. Happy to have you here today. Your presence has been truly inspiring, and I'm profoundly grateful for the wisdom and insights you've brought to the table. I'm certain that our dialogue has left an indelible mark, enriching and motivating all who have tuned in. It's been a pleasure to kickstart this meaningful conversation about passion, career, and leadership. Once again, thank you for being an integral part of our podcast family. Stay tuned for more captivating episodes brimming with engaging conversation and narratives that ignite inspiration. Until we meet again, take care, stay curious, and keep shining brightly. Bye!